All right, this is PK Young again, candidate for the upcoming Afocom USA presidential elections. And I will be continuing with a discussion on our strategic goals, what we have to offer for the organization and come. We hope that you will continue to find interest in our agenda and that you have plans to support it or to bring forward your own ideas so that we can work together as a team. So I already talked about the strategic goals 1 and 2, which is what we already we have here on the slide. So the first goal was to intentionally the idea is to intentionally create an inclusive environment where peace, love, and empathy can thrive. The second one, the learning and practice of com culture and language. I'm sure we already covered that in a separate video. And so now I'm going to actually move on to the third strategic pillar, which is one of the most important ones that we have, looking at projects. So as an organization, since inception, I know we've been carrying out a lot of projects, but from what our fathers, our elders in the organization have told us, this organization was primarily about culture. But over time, it evolved to embrace development, especially amongst ourselves and our community back home. So what we think as Team PK, we are coming in and we'll be doing a little things a little bit differently, where village development associations will now be able to apply for funding. We can have com groups and members of AFOCOM USA. So each and every member of AFOCOM USA will be able to apply for funding for projects that they can do in their respective villages. I think that is a great way for every member to relate to this organization. That's a great way for every member to feel like they belong, because you have a chance at developing your own community by coming up with a project, and that project has to go through the projects committee. So the project now, if it goes through the project committee and gets funded, then you who were the principal investigators on the project, you look good to your community or to your village back home. AFOCOM USA looks good to your community back home. We all look good and we are all doing things that we are passionate about. Because from what I have noticed, a lot of us are passionate about doing things for our community. We are all great philanthropists. From what I see in this organization, we feel like giving back. We have been a little bit more blessed and we want to bless others. And so if you have an opportunity where you can write up a project for something that will benefit people in your village, I think this organization should be able to go through that and see if it qualifies as an AFOCOM USA project. And then AFOCOM USA will now partner with you to get that project done. And we have to make sure that it goes through the project committee. So application guidelines or forms that spell out clear expectations to seek the funding are actually being developed now by members of my campaign team. A scoring rubric, because those particular applications will actually be scored. So whichever one gets the best score gets priority over the others. And that goes through the very scrutiny. And then at that time, we decide based on the availability of funds, which ones we are going to fund, which ones we are going to carry forward, which ones we are just going to completely discard. So I think this makes every member of this organization to stand a chance to benefit. So take, for instance, if 5 people get on a project and those 5 people are members of AFOCOM USA, they have to be members in good standing, which means they have to pay their annual dues. They have to pay their dues to AFOCOM USA. So that gives AFOCOM USA some little bit of money. And in turn, when that project gets funded and we partner with them, then we are penetrating different villages. Because if you have a project from Anyajua, for instance, and then another project from Abu, another project from people from Wombong or Bobong, for instance. So if you have these different villages that are submitting projects, then in the end, these are little projects that we can handle. And if we can handle that, then we are actually taking development to more villages. I have seen situations where villages go through about 3 years trying to raise about 3 million francs, which is probably just about $5,000, in order to have a water project going. in order to have, just a gutter or some improvement in their village. So they go through a tedious process of fundraising. And if we can be able to help fund some of these projects, little projects, not big projects, just little projects, that way we can help a lot more villages. And tell me, if you are in this organization and you are from a particular village, you know about your village better than anyone else. Therefore, we want you to be the champion. We want you to be the principal partner that we have in order to execute that project, making sure that the Bonta or the development association in that particular village actually signs on to that project to make sure that it is something that the community actually needs. And then the project committee will pass it through its system and make sure that the project qualifies. And then we can now have a portfolio for AFOACOM USA project and projects, and then we go from there. So we have a scoring rubric. Everything will be transparent. We are going to have a very good projects committee. We are already thinking about who could be members of that committee. And we know that this project that I just described are probably going to fall in the short-term projects. So this is probably going to fall in the area of short-term projects, but we can have long-term projects as well. AFOACOM USA actually has in its constitution that we can embark on long-term projects. And some of the long-term projects that Team PK is thinking about actually include projects like we can build an event center in Douala. And why not the USA? We can actually build an event center in the USA. I was in Douala last December and I attended an event, and just renting that particular hall was 2 million francs CFA. So imagine that as an organization, we are able to build an event center, generate income from there to help our communities, to advance our mission. I think that will be extremely wonderful. Imagine that we have an event center here in the United States. And I'm thinking that if we're to have an event center here in the United States, it will be determined by the area with the greatest population of COM people. So I'm thinking about the DC chapter may be able to host our event center for the national organization, or maybe the Minnesota chapter, the most populated chapter. So we can look into that as a long-term project, and then actually have an event center here in the US where we can have events, it can be rented out, and we then use the money in order to run our projects and in order to advance our mission. So, and I think I heard sometime in the past that the DC chapter had been working on securing a place. And so these are all things that we can be able to look into and see how we can do it at a much bigger scale. Some examples of long-term projects could include water projects that we can do for our communities back home. It could also include a museum at the palace. And I just want to specify here that there's been a lot of talk about the palace project, and I want to specify that in Article 7, Section 5, Part A of the AFOACOM USA Constitution, the palace project is actually listed there as one of the long-term projects that it is supposed to embark on. So it's not a bad idea to focus on an area that makes all of us proud as a community. A lot of work has gone on, and we do have our footprints on there. I know that the pioneer leaders of this organization did an amazing job to provide a guest house for that palace. And as COM tradition entails, when you build a house at the palace, at first, the village used to construct a house. Once you do that, then you have to go back every year and do the renovation. So those are things that we can start looking into as part of our projects going forward. We have a house that as a community in the United States, we built at the palace. We have to always check on it and make sure that it is in good state. So in terms of short-term projects, just to mention, my administration plans to focus on ones that provide social amenities and economic empowerment to less privileged communities, widows, widowers, children, and people that are living with disabilities. So it's very, very important that we also think about solar electrification projects in our communities these days, because that's the new direction. And then we have farming projects that could involve poultry, it could involve goats, it could involve all kinds of different farming, just things that can make our communities better. In another dimension, I think it is sometimes difficult to get people to volunteer to lead in our organization, and we can actually encourage we can actually encourage leadership within our organization by having what we call one-time leadership grants. And we can make sure that our national presidents can actually apply for the leadership grants, which means they can come up with a project from their own villages, and then that project goes through the same scrutiny like any other project. And if the projects committee approves it, then the organization pairs now or collaborates with the particular president, and then that project is executed in that particular village. Same thing could be extended to chapter project, to chapter presidents, and we have, let's say we just have a $2,000 grant that it is possible for any chapter president to apply for and to do a project in their village that under normal circumstances, that would have been a project that Afuacom USA would have been doing anyway. And so this will make some people to see a reason to step up and lead, because most of us, as I said, we want to do stuff for our community, and it's not for ourselves. So there has to be that incentive that will make us to attract good leaders. And we could extend this to national EXCO members, the Office of the Ombudsman, and then some committee chairs. And the amount doesn't matter. Everything that I've put on the slide here is just tentative. It will require our approval going forward. And what I also think is that we can include past national presidents on this leadership grants. And the bottom line here is that some of the presidents may choose not to apply. You have to have been in leadership position for at least 1 year and in good standing, because some chapter presidents may not be in good standing. They may not be leading their chapters the way we want. And when they apply for these grants, that could work against them. So, and it's a one-time thing, and it's now a way that we can also attract good leaders. We can make people see a reason to step up and lead. Even if we reduce the amounts, it's significant when you do something for your village. And guess what? If chapter presidents, if national presidents, if all these group leaders are having grants in their villages, and then we have Comcuda groups applying for grants for us here in the US with very little money, we will be touching so many villages' income. And I'm thinking we are going to move to, our team is actually suggesting we move to a budget approach where we come to the convention just to present a budget for the next year. If you look at the way that we do it, we can dedicate some amount of money that will go for short-term projects, and then dedicate some amount of money that will go for long-term projects. And then all that the project committee does is to evaluate the projects that came in and execute. We don't have to sit there and debate on every tiny project. A project for $1,000, we sit there and we argue. No, we just dedicate some funds, and then at the end, feedback is brought to us. So our team would have established guidelines, like our project review process will be very transparent and will drive fairness, transparency, and excellence. So we will develop eligibility criteria for those projects, submission and acceptance guidelines, assessment criteria, and the rubric. And then we'll have project evaluation metrics that are going to, we are going to utilize. So bottom line is we establish the guidelines, make sure all of us approve it. Then we accept submissions, we accept project applications from anyone within the organization, and we can make it in groups. We can say, hey, you must have a group of 3, you must have a group of 5. On your project request, that's fine. On your funding request, that will be fine, as long as they analyze based on the budget that has been allocated and based on how many projects we actually think are good projects. What's the population of your village? Is this benefiting widows? Is it benefiting children? What is it about? So all those details we are going to be able to work out. And that way we are actually penetrating a lot more people, income, and even projects that can benefit us here. Our team has a plan for that as well. So, so once we have established the guidelines, we have accepted submissions, then we do a review. Then now we create an AFOCOM project portfolio. Then we execute the awards. Then we evaluate the project results. In an ongoing basis, we shall be updating the General Assembly and then providing reports. Now, this is an example of when I said we can move to a budget-based system where we come to the convention and the executive has prepared a budget for approval. So we suggest certain things. So this is totally an example. It has nothing to do with what we will actually do. But for instance, we say, okay, this is how much we can allocate to project. This is how much we can allocate to this. This is how much we can allocate to convention programming and all of that. So we can have something like this. And once it is approved, it's handed over to the project committee. When we bring the budget, people will argue, people will ask us to justify, then we cut here, add over there. And as long as the budget doesn't exceed maybe about 11% of what was presented, if it has to exceed that, then we come back to the General Assembly for approval or whatever approval system we have in place. So these are the things that I think we can do, and then it will cut our time at conventions where we spend arguing on little things here and there, instead of just approving a budget and trusting the executive and the projects committee or whichever committee has to work on that to do it. So our fourth strategic pillar is to actually implement innovative fundraising strategies and convention hosting. So the plan here is to expand our membership and the role that they play in project committees in to expand the role of the project committee to actually include fundraising. That is how it is actually laid out in our constitution, but the project committee does not actually, I didn't find that in our constitution. I realized that in our constitution, we instead have what we call the foundation, which I think the description tells me it is supposed to be doing exactly what the project committee is doing. So, which actually included fundraising. So we will make our project committee to also include fundraising strategies. So there's nothing wrong in reaching out to the Clinton Foundation or to any other foundation and actually pay experts that are amongst ourselves to write grants and attract money to come into our organization. So it's very important that we can hunt the money without having to squeeze ourselves. So we are a 501c organization and we can make maximum use of this particular capability. So we will be able to apply for grants. And one of the things is that our conventions are becoming more and more scarier to host. When you mention hosting for a chapter, they start getting scared. And I think that we can do something about it. So we're going to create a task force that will explore cost-effective and scalable ways of doing our conventions. I think we are still using the format that was used since this organization was created to plan our conventions. We are not accounting for the fact that membership has increased. The number of food that used to be cooked only for about 100 people, now we have to cater for about 400 people. We were not ready for this particular dramatic increase. So it's very important that we look back and try to put things in a way that 10 years down the road, we have a template for hosting a convention and chapters will readily host. It's not going to be a big burden. So one of the things that is happening is that, like I say, convention hosting is not scalable, and there is not enough education on com culture during our conventions. So we can create room to add more culture. And then there is the cultural animation night. I think it doesn't really achieve a satisfactory, equitable participation. Sometimes we feel like our men participate more than our women or than our grandmothers. Maybe we have cultural performances and very few involve women. And so we have to be able to do our convention programming to capture this. And maybe we can find a way to include the kids so that it's not just an adult thing, it's not just a men's thing, it also includes women, it includes children. And so we have to look into that. Our cultural nights, maybe they start late. There are reasons that we can advance for that. We will try to be able to fix some of the things. Then our gala night and fundraising night actually leaves very little time for dancing and merrymaking. So that has to do with our fundraising. Should we be doing that before the convention? So we need to think about these things so that we actually go to the convention just to enjoy and celebrate our culture and celebrate our togetherness and celebrate our unity. So this is what Team PK has for you in terms of strategic pillars 3 and 4, and stay tuned for more. And please, if you have any suggestions, feel free to reach out to us. This should be a collective effort. This should be about COM. So when you go to vote, you should be voting for someone that you think has a plan, that you think can do some of the things that they say they will do. We may not be able to achieve at 100%, but trust me, we are going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you where we failed. We're going to tell you where we succeeded, and then we're going to look for opportunities to improve. Vote for Team PK, and you are voting for a prosperous COM. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for more details.